Hello and welcome to a lovely day here in Glasgow and our final live broadcast from Zero Waste Scotland with COP26 happening here in the background. Unbelievably, the conference is coming to a close and we're looking towards seeing commitments and actions that will take place moving forward. Our message is clear and remains the same. We need to talk about consumption. To truly end our contribution to the climate crisis, we need to rethink how we consume in Scotland and around the world.
Scotland and other parts of the world have declared a climate emergency. Global emissions are destroying our planet, and if we carry on as we are, it's going to get worse. If we're serious about ending our contribution to climate change, we need to rethink how we consume, both here in Scotland and around the world. And that's something all of us need to be involved in.
We need a system-wide change that enables us all to choose more sustainable ways to live, use the things we need and share resources. This is what's known as a circular economy. Through it, we can maximise value from the goods we already have in circulation, while relieving pressure on finite natural materials like oil and precious metals. We know that adapting to a circular economy can and does work for everyone, delivering an improved bottom line for business and offering a more sustainable way of life for citizens. Zero Waste Scotland is working with communities and businesses across Scotland, helping to reimagine the way we live, work and travel. By working together, we have a huge opportunity to accelerate our circularity and to change Scotland and the world for the better.
Each of us has a vital role to play in tackling climate change, and it starts now.
As COP26 draws to a close, there's been plenty happening over the past few days. We've pulled together the latest news, agreements and progress that's been made. Fears are mounting that the draft deals waters down the push to curb fossil fuels. This comes following doubt on whether a deal will be reached to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Hundreds of academics have denounced the Glasgow Summit as a failure and call for a real green revolution by signing an open letter criticising COP26 in which they state they believe corporate interests are overrepresented. And finally, the US and China have made a joint declaration to accelerate measures in the 2020s to tackle the climate crisis. The world's two largest polluters have committed to a working group for this decade, saying that they will meet often and focus on concrete actions. But despite all the progress and positive ambitions, the topic of consumption still needs to be higher on the global agenda. To truly end our contribution to the climate crisis, Zero Waste Scotland believes we need to rethink how we consume in Scotland and around the world. Around 4/5 of Scotland's footprint comes from the products and materials we manufacture, use and throw away. From food to fashion, from travel to technology, we must find ways to reduce the amount of materials we use. We're playing a leading role in the country's effort to tackle climate change, reduce our consumption of raw materials and helping our nation's transition to a circular economy. Zero Waste Scotland has groundbreaking research and case studies showing the issue of consumption, carbon emissions and its priority to the climate crisis response. We've seen leaders, celebrities and other public figures from around the world meet in Glasgow over the 2 weeks to agree on the action we need to take to tackle the climate crisis. Though it isn't just these individuals who can and will shape our future. Zero Waste Scotland recognises that behaviour change on issues around waste can often be most effectively achieved through community engagement at a local level. Individuals and groups across Scotland have already been using materials, training and support from Zero Waste Scotland to help take action on waste in their communities. Here's a short video showing some of the amazing work and feedback from people just like you, taking positive actions to help reimagine Scotland and tackle the climate crisis. Back to COP26, and part of our live broadcast, we've been out and about in the streets of Glasgow to get a flavour of opinions on the climate, consumption and COP26. People make Glasgow, and here's what they had to say as the fortnight draws to a close.
My hope is that people will have remembered all the many events I'm sure they would have gone to where they heard that the climate change that is already happening is disproportionately affecting the global south, and that it's already affecting the global south, and that without adaptation and finance for everybody, we can't all equitably even align to the 1.5 promise that we kept. I think the global north needs to remember that we've already used our carbon budget. We've already used it years ago. So all that we've got left to try to keep within the 1.5 target, we can't now equally share it. We've already used our own. We can't put it all on the global south to make up for our deficit. So I think it's not too late to secure finance. It's not too late to secure meaningful action for adaptation and equally for mitigation. So I hope that's what they remember from the 2 weeks where I hope they heard that often and often.
I hope that they learn to exclude the fossil fuel industries from the talks. Thank you.
I hope that the public are aware that the COP has been a failure and that governments are still promoting economic growth. They're still promoting business as usual. And although they've made promises and commitments, that these are absolutely window dressing. There's nothing with any meat, I suppose, is the traditional word. There's no, they're all mouth and no trousers. And I hope the public are not buying this story that we're on the case and we're doing it, because they absolutely aren't.
So post-COP, I think this has been a wee bit of a farce. They don't really address the real issues in terms of keeping it in the ground. And a kind of commitment to net zero is waffly enough, as they would say in Northern Ireland. At post-COP, my hope would be that they do make more substantial commitments, but that seems just a commitment to move further in the road. My hope would be for the civil society groups, the XRNI, for the different kind of groups, to keep the momentum up after this and to keep the foot in the throat of the delegates, just to keep the pressure up and more action. So that would be my hope.
For the future post-COP, I would say my hopes are, I guess, that it continues on whatever kind of bit of momentum that's got here. I think with COVID, a lot of it kind of dampened itself down. So just kind of a continuation. And actually in the next COP, I'd like to see a lot more kind of voices heard that weren't heard at this one or weren't heard enough and listened to. I think there's been, listening to people speak over the past few days, there's been a lot of kind of disappointment and aggravation at people tokenistically speaking to young people and not taking anything on, and Indigenous communities and people from the global south. Their voices are being heard, but they're actually not doing anything about it, which is, I think, a massive, massive problem. But like greenwashing, you've youth washing now and everything else. So I would like to see less of that as we go on, and more like actually taking people seriously, maybe not just on a country basis, but on a community basis as well for the next COP. Yeah, so that's kind of my hopes post-COP.
I think there's progress being made, but I don't think it's enough, and I don't think it's fast enough or soon enough, looking at like the science that we already have. The fact that the phrase fossil fuel even has to be debated whether it's going to be put into the next COP26 agreement is just ridiculous. The fact it wasn't in the Paris Agreement is even worse. I think people being out here outside the COP building, it shows politicians and people in positions of power that we really care, but it's really going to have to come down to those people who have that power to consciously make that decision to divest in fossil fuel, invest in greener industry and shift the way we're going.
That's all we've got time for today, and indeed for COP26. It doesn't end here though, it's just the beginning. We have plenty of updates and resources available from Zero Waste Scotland on consumption, COP26 and the climate crisis. Make sure you visit our content hub at zerowastescotland.org.uk/COP26. You can follow us on social media, all links are added in the description and comment sections. If you have any questions or comments, reach out and give us a shout. For now, thanks for joining us